Give it to me again. What did you see? Big drop off from last month, right? Okay, so it's October, which means it's time to pull September numbers and general market data, which Danny's always so good to pull for us every month. Again, we're pulling our own metrics, not relying on the outliers like Cincinnati, Cleveland, Sandusky numbers. We don't have Springfield in our mix. We are the Central Ohio market, and there is a lot of movement here. Some of it is as expected as we start balancing out the market. One big thing, though, is that the average sale price month over month fell by $27,500. That's enormous. That's an enormous difference month to month. We'll go over that as we go into the details. Danny, I'm going to let you take over on the numbers for homes sold. We'll start with that.
Yep, you can see that the home sold for the month of September, 2,162, which was actually down 4% month over month, but up 4% year over year. So again, you can see if you look at the trend line there, things typically around this time of year start to cool off for post-summer. That's usually the biggest, heaviest sales season for us in the Central Ohio market. So things are starting to taper off. This looks pretty normal, to be honest. Current supply of active homes is over 4,200, which puts us at just about 2 months of supply. And that's higher. That was only, I think, 1.75 months of supply last month, and about 1.5 the month before. So we're starting to see that more and more inventory is coming online at the same time that fewer and fewer homes are selling per month.
Yep. And that's product both of the seasonality of the market. But just keep in mind that at 2 months of supply, we're solidly in a seller's market still. The typical definition of seller's market is 6 months or less. A balanced market would be 6 months supply. Now, the next metric is the one that's throwing us off a bit. We always see, again, a little bit of a precipitous downturn as we start to cool off towards the end of the summer. This one is anomalous, though, because it is 27,000 less than it was last month, which is a lot. And this is the first time in our recording metrics that we've actually taken a loss, even though it's a small one. It is down year over year on the numbers there.
Yeah, and so if you look at this chart, I mean, obviously your eye gravitates to the right-hand side of it, the most recent big dip. But just take a moment and scroll all the way over to the left. What you're looking at there is the first month is April, May, June of last year. And the reason we do that is we want you to see more than a full 12 months worth, because again, there's a lot of seasonality here. And what we oftentimes see is just that exact pattern. April goes up to May, then June, and then things start to hit their peak, and then they crest, and then they come back down. So you can see that happened with July, August, September. And then on down, things went all the way through January, which is normal. That's the normal shape of the year. But every year, this September was higher slightly than last September. And that September was slightly higher than the September before, 3, 4, 5%. What we're seeing now is a pretty big change where month over month, we're down on a percentage basis, over 6.5% month over month. And then we're down just about $1,300 in the average sale price year over year, which is 0%. But it's notable that it's not up 5%, right? And so that's kind of what we would have been expecting. That's the change. And it's hard to say exactly what's happening until you get a couple of months of that to really establish there's a trend. But clearly, this is a time of year where things start to slow down just from an overall activity point of view. You can also see that for the last couple of months, the average sale price was coming in below the average list price. And so if you are a realtor and you're looking to price a home, you're looking at the most recent sales. And if you're seeing that things are coming in lower and lower, well, now you're going to have to list your new house that you're putting on the market lower than maybe you would have 2 or 3 months ago. And so I think there's some of that that's happening. The market's just trying to catch up with the most recent trend, but hard to say for sure exactly what's caused that big of a drop off month over month.
Yeah, and you got to keep in mind when you're looking at this metric here, the August numbers, the month before, that's a little higher uptick than we expected. So kind of exaggerates the downturn there that we saw this month. So maybe a correction. We don't know that this is enough to call it a trend yet. Something we definitely have to keep watching. I think it has to be a couple of months anomalous before we can call a trend in either direction, because last month it would have looked like we're trending up.
Yeah, and we did say that, right? That's a great point, because we said, well, what's going on here? This should be flat to July or down from July, because that would be the seasonal norm that we've seen for the last handful of years that we've been doing this. The fact that it ticked upwards, not a huge amount, but that it did it at all was different. And we said at the time that we would watch it, and boy, oh boy, this is not exactly what we were expecting. And you're right, we should watch and get a couple more months under our belt before we really kind of say with any confidence what we think is going on.
Yeah, we're just showing the numbers as we find them. And then once we have enough, we'll declare a trend once we're confident in which direction they're going. Still fairly balanced market towards the seller's advantage overall.
Yeah.
Another indicator there is percent over and under asking.
Yep, absolutely right. And sorry to jump in there, but I think that all these charts, and maybe the next ones too, are really saying, even though this is still a technically, from a technical standpoint, a seller's market, it's getting to be more favorable to buyers. And it's becoming more favorable to buyers in a material way, right? You may be competing with fewer and fewer people. You may have sellers that you're buying from that are more likely to have a price reduction. So if you're a buyer right now, stay focused, stay on task. Things are moving ever in your favor as the months tick by here. And yeah, you can see that, the percent that went 5% or more over asking shrunk month over month. You can see that the percent that went 5% or more below asking, that orange section, that increased month over month. But again, if you look all the way back to the left-hand side of the chart, it's pretty normal. We'd expect that green section is going to continue to compress as things cool off. The orange section, more and more, houses are going to have to go with a price reduction before they sell, just because the overall market activity is down. With all that inventory that's out there, sellers are competing more and more with other sellers.
Yeah, that's about as expected. It is more than it was this time last year, but it's on trend. It's on the path that we would have expected. No big jumps there. Same thing with days on the market. That's essentially the same number. That's why the price difference is so shocking. And Danny, I think you pointed out earlier, that could be the number of high-priced houses coming off, affecting that, because the rest of the numbers are basically as expected. Price reductions are up 2% over the previous month, which was up 2% over the month before that. This is a pretty smooth transition to a more balanced market, more favorable to buyers. And then the mortgage rates, I do appreciate that you picked out our high and our low over the past year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, this is really 2 years. So those numbers that are on the page, that's this October 1st versus October 1st-ish of last year versus the early part of October the year before. So you can see at this moment in time, for the last 3 years, here's where we are. And I don't know if this is a thing that plays into that reduction in both list price and sale price, but I think we've been in this kind of like higher interest rate environment now for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that while things are better than they were 2 years ago, they haven't really changed much over the last year. And I just wonder about the level of fatigue that's in the market right now if you're a buyer. And even for some sellers not bringing their homes into the market when they're already sitting on such a great interest rate. We've got people that are still locked in, which I think is still a really big factor. But yeah, not a big change year over year. In fact, we're up, 22 basis points. So pretty flat. Not what I think people were hoping. I think people were hoping this year we'd start to see more price reductions. And while we've had some cuts recently, probably not as much as the market would want.
Yeah, it's effectively the same interest rate we've been at for the last couple of years. Looks like we were higher at one point 2 years ago. I'd expect that to stay very similar, into the future, even if we do get some federal rate cuts, just because the market's not going to move dramatically unless something happens, right? So we'll keep checking this out. This is very interesting number set this month. Danny, thanks as always for pulling the numbers. Let's keep on it and update people if there's any breaking news, I guess it would be, as far as market data goes. So exciting. And thanks again for always pulling numbers, Danny.
You got it.